We're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin today at McKinley Marina, and this is Keith Gelhar. And if you look real close, you can see behind him an ultimate 14.5 kayak from Native Watercraft. He takes this boat out onto Lake Michigan in search of salmon. Keith, why don't you tell us a bit more about what you do?
Well, I started kayaking out on Lake Michigan about 3 years ago. Started getting out there and had some friends of mine that fished on Lake Michigan, and I went out on their boat and kind of realized I'd probably be able to do it in a kayak. So went out there with kind of learned from them how to rig everything up, and then as far as what to use on Lake Michigan, and been going ever since, and just having a good time heading out there. Well, with the Native Watercraft, what I looked at was that it was a nice open design. I had a lot of cargo space. I could store a lot more gear, and also I could load up and store my fish inside the kayak as opposed to dragging them behind myself, which gets to be tiresome.
So that's what the box is in the front part of your boat?
That's
there?
right. Yeah, it's a little custom-made live well, basically. It's just, I put a little ice in there sometimes, and I'll just put the fish in there. It's got a lid that flips up, and then I can put them in there.
Well, tell me about what you fish with.
All right. Well, on Lake Michigan, on a kayak, what I found best is one of my favorite systems to run is a rod set up with copper line. And the copper is used to weight the lure down. The more line you let out, the deeper the lure is going to be dragged down by the weight of the copper line. It's about 30 feet of line. It'll get you down about 8 to 10 feet depending on the lure that you're using. This also gets it back behind the boat a good ways, and it's a little more stealth mode to catch a fish. The other one that we use, it's a little faster to set up, is I like to use a slide diver. You can also use dipsy divers, but I find that on a kayak, a slide diver works the best. The reason for that is that you can adjust the length of the lead behind your diving disc. So if I want to have this back, the line back 10, 12 feet, 50 feet, whatever it takes, if I'm in shallow water and the fish are a little spooky, I can set that back, set my diving disc on the slide diver. Then when that fish trips, the sliding disc will run all the way back to the swivel I got back, maybe a couple feet back. With a dipsy diver, you have to have it set probably about 6 or so feet behind the disc, because you get turbulence from the disc itself for your lure to do the proper action. With the slide diver, or with that, then you end up having too long of a lead when you're trying to net your fish and bring it up. You really can't get your rod high enough to be able to net the fish. So that's one of the things that I found to work best out here.
Tell us more about what you're fishing for.
On Lake Michigan, we're fishing for salmon, trout. We got king salmon, we got coho, we have rainbow trout, brown trout, lake trout. Those are the 5 species. Mainly, I'm usually out for kings, but depending on the time of the year, it could be any of the above.
So you're happy with the state of the Lake Michigan fishery? It seems to be pretty good, or growing?
It's doing well. This year's been a tough year with I think it was the weather pattern that we had. Everybody's struggling a little bit, but the fish are there. It's just getting them. Last year, I would have days where I'd pull in 10 fish in the morning, and I'm just running one rod out here, so definitely have some very good mornings out here.
So it sounds like the fish are what, shallow, deep? I mean, where do you usually catch a fish?
With the salmon, you gotta kind of follow the water temperature and the bait, of course. They prefer cooler water in the 50s, even into the 40s. We get the west winds, the water gets cold and close, and then you can be catching them as shallow as 10 feet of water, or as, you can go out to 100 feet,
So a west wind blows the surface water out and brings cooler water in the shore?
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So when that happens, it's ideal for us, so we don't have to paddle 3 miles out. A lot of times I've caught fish just out in 35 feet of water, which is maybe a quarter mile out, not even most times.
So you let your lure and your diver and your discs out, a variable distance, and then once it's out, you paddle the whole time?
You just start paddling, and it's Usually doing about 2.2, 2.5, 3 miles an hour on the GPS, and which is a pretty leisurely pace when you're out there in the kayak. So you're not fighting it the whole time. I have a fish finder with the GPS unit in it. It has a map, and I can mark my locations on a GPS. As soon as I catch or hit into a fish, I'll mark it on a GPS. I'll go through, I'll catch that fish, and I'll re-rig and I'll follow my little snail trail, and I'll come right back through there. And 9 times out of 10, I'll pick up another one. Usually there's a school and it's pretty close by, and I can go back and forth on that school and pick up quite a number of fish. So, which is different from a bigger boat, a bigger charter boat. They have so many lines out and they're so big, they might be able to come back, but it's going to take them a long time. I can just hit right back on that school again. So it's one of the advantages of being in a kayak.
Are you usually parallel to shore, or it sounds like you're following water temperature more than anything else, and you're not fishing on structure or any of that?
Structure is part of it. I'll tend to find my fish coming off a little bit of a break. It all depends on where the bait fish are holding up. You find yourself a nice pod of AOIs out there, which is the main forage out there, and you have a good chance of hooking up once you start going through finding some bait. All right, we're heading out today. We got a pretty brisk wind. It's probably pushing 15, 25 gusts. It's out of the west though, which is good for the side of the lake we're on. We got a little bit of a chop, so nothing too bad. I don't have any problem coming out in this kind of weather or any larger waves. Swells out here are not so bad. It's anytime I start getting wave build-up and I actually they start cresting and rolling over, that's when I'll start thinking about pulling in and heading in close to shore or just packing it up. But this boat here, I've had it out in waves that I likely probably shouldn't have had it in, and it did handle very well. I was very pleased with it, and had no problem getting back in. So it was just an effort on my part for paddling. So, but you got to play safe, and you got to just check out the weather report and then go from there. Use your own common sense. We're heading out through the North Gap out of McKinley. It's one of the access points inside the harbor. I find that it's usually choppier and rougher water than it is outside on the main lake, especially on a west or southwest wind. So once we get clear here, you see the waves have calmed down. It's not so bad out here, and we can paddle out and be good for probably the whole day here. I'm going to run the copper line. I got a J plug on there. They caster reel, and they have a line count on them. They're meant for trolling, so that helps you to know exactly how much line you set out, so that when you find that magic depth, you can keep going to that point and then keep getting to the same location that the fish are hanging out at. And then once I get it into the water and it starts to drag a bit, then I can kind of go to take that clicker off and I'll let the free spool out. And then once that gets to where the depth I want, I'll click it over, readjust my rod, and then I'll start paddling and start to troll. Once I grab the rod, of course you want to keep the tension on as best you can all the times. Don't let the slacken in the line. And one of the things I'll do, because you're in a kayak, that sometimes you'll start to turn, your kayak will turn towards that tension, and you'll start to almost lose slack if you go head on. So what I'll do is I'll fight the fish from the side so that my kayak parallels the fish. It's perpendicular to where I'm going or where the fish is pulling, and that's a little bit more drag on there, and it allows me to get a little more resistance on the rod when I'm fighting them. So if you go straight with them though, you're just going to start slicing right through the water, and it's going to be hard to catch up to them until you get on top, and then it'll probably start fighting down. But until that time, I usually like to keep it off to the side like that, so perpendicular to the fish.